creation of the first atomic weapons. Roswell was the only nuclear-armed squadron in the world.
If you accept the multi-dimensional theory, it's highly likely we've done a hell of a lot of damage. In somebody else's world, it might have even done more damage than we did here.
The underlying theme that connects most of the Disclosure Project case files is the fact that these close encounters tend to occur near our nuclear facilities, suggesting that these visitors are deeply concerned with our hostility and the existential threat that we pose to ourselves and others once we learn to split the atom.
These are some of the highest-ranking military officials in our defense program. They're trusted with, nuclear weapons. They're trusted with top-level security clearances and security. But the minute that they start talking about this particular subject, they become pariah.
I believe the American people are entitled to a more thorough explanation than has been given them by the Air Force. I think we owe it to the people to establish credibility regarding UFOs and to produce the greatest possible enlightenment of this subject. Former President Gerald Ford.
I am prepared to state that I have been at locations where craft of unknown origin that did not originate on the face of this planet was there. And I am prepared to state that while I was there, we saw living, dead bodies of entities that were not born on this planet. I am prepared to state that we had what they referred to as interfacing with those entities. Never was there any compelling physical evidence.
The question is, who are people like Carl Sagan? And before him, Professor Donald Winson. It turns out that Sagan, in his early career, actually spoke and wrote about UFOs in a way that was affirmative, that was legitimate. After he was threatened by the intelligence community and blackmailed, he then began to debunk the issue. Skepticism is very healthy. I'm a big skeptic about more than 90% of the information out there on this subject, which the public needs to be skeptical of. However, skepticism is not just blindly denying everything that's legitimate. For example, we have 3,500 cases where extraterrestrial vehicles have landed and left physical traces. We have 4,000 cases where they have been tracked on radar and seen by pilots. We have an enormous amount of photo and video evidence and physical evidence. And in our last project, brought out an actual body that is most likely not of human origin. So the question becomes, what is the metric for the evidence? Well, the evidence is actually overwhelming. There's more evidence for UFOs than there are for black holes. Most of the theories in astrophysics, most of the evidence for most of the medicines you take. I'm speaking now as a trauma doctor. And yet, we have this blockage in the mainstream media and scientific establishment saying, where is the evidence?
What do we know? We know now we live in an ever-expanding universe. We know that there are billions of stars and planets literally out there, and the universe is getting bigger. We know from our fancy telescopes that just in the last 2 years, more than 20 planets have been identified outside our solar system that seem to be far enough away from their suns and dense enough that they might be able to support some form of life. So it makes it increasingly less likely that we're alone.
Oh, you're trying to give me a hint that there are aliens.
Of course, flying saucers are real, and they are interplanetary. Air Chief Marshal Lord Dowding.
When I was 8 or 9, I saw one of Burl Ives. And Burl Ives, he was a 33rd degree Mason. So all of you people who think that all these secret societies, everyone in it knows everything, they don't know anything. And he said to me, he says, we all know that Marilyn Monroe didn't die of an overdose. He said, do you know why they killed Marilyn?
Mr. President, the late Marilyn Monroe.
And I said, well, I didn't until I got this document. It's a virtual death warrant because she was found a couple of days later. 3 August 1962, a wiretap of telephone conversations between reporter Dorothy Kilgallen, who was looking into Roswell and other UFO issues, and her close friend Howard Rothberg, from wiretap of telephone conversation of Marilyn Monroe and Attorney General Bobby Kennedy. Rothberg discussed the apparent comeback of the subject with Kilgallen and the breakup with the Kennedys. This is referring to the fact that Marilyn Monroe had been having an affair with not one but both Kennedy brothers, and it was becoming conspicuous, so they broke it off. Rothberg indicated in so many words that she had secrets to tell, no doubt, arising from her trysts with the president and the attorney general. One such secret mentions the visit of the president at a secret air base for the purpose of inspecting things from outer space. Now, this is 1962. Kilgallen said that if the story is true, it would be a terrible embarrassment for Jack and his plans to have NASA put men on the moon.
We choose to go to the moon in this decade and do the other things, not because they are easy, but because they are hard.
The subject repeatedly called the Attorney General and complained about the way she was being ignored by the President and his brother. The subject threatened to hold a press conference and would tell all. It's a tragic situation because she was an actress. She didn't understand the national security state and the viciousness of those who want to keep these sort of secrets.
The aliens won't let it happen. You reveal all their secrets. They exercise strict control over us.
Now, you know, there are a lot of people that are going to examine your facial expressions here, every twitch, everything, and say, and of course, so did you look? Did you see? Did you explore?
I can't reveal anything.
Oh, really? Because President Clinton said he did go right in, and he did check, and there was nothing.
Well, you know, that's what we're instructed to say.
One of the most powerful elements of the structure of secrecy has to do with the infiltration and control over mainstream media.
It's a media of the league, a media of the league. Home media is controlled by a few corporations, thanks to deregulation by the FCC.
You mean Disney, Fox, Westinghouse, and good old GE?
They own networks from CBS to CNBC.
They can use them to say whatever they please and put down the opinions of anyone who disagrees.
We observed firsthand the intelligence community influencing the media when they're trying to cover this story. We have memoranda after memoranda after memoranda citing the psychological warfare and propaganda value of the subject. This is a very important thing for the public to understand. How do you keep something secret? You hide it in plain sight.
And I suspect that unless the Defense Department proves us otherwise, that it was probably some form of an alien spacecraft. And I think as a public figure, you have to be very careful about what you say, because people can have pretty emotional reactions. And I said my goal wasn't to try to stir the pot.
And now I'll ask Officer Stein and his colleagues to escort the accused into the room so that we may all look upon the guilty party. Don't get him too close to me, please.
In the alien costume, the governor's chief of staff.
And this just goes to show that you guys are entirely too serious.
So it's there. Everyone, I mean, there's 5% of the U.S. population have seen these objects. But you create an environment where the subject is so pilloried and ridiculed that no respectable scientist or doctor would want to be identified with it.
Internal documents from the Defense Department and intelligence agencies explicitly stating that they want to have this campaign of ridiculing and destroying the credibility of completely credible, completely honest eyewitnesses to UFO sightings and even sightings of extraterrestrial beings on the ground, that they want them discredited. They want their credibility destroyed.
If someone comes out and says, I saw a UFO on TV, the only ones that see a UFO in the TV programs are the rednecks out in the country that are going coon hunting or alligator hunting at night. You don't find anybody with any kind of smarts or some professional individual saying, hey, last night, let me tell you what I saw.
And this officially was released by the CIA, talking about how they have people embedded in all the major media to change, alter, and affect stories to their benefit.
You are fake news.
So every news agency, every television, radio station in the Albuquerque, Santa Fe area had our snitches in there. So we knew, and we paid them. We paid them good money. One of the reasons you get the people is you pay them. And that was controversial. That was somewhat controversial.
Do you know of national media that have had?
Oh, yes, yeah. I'm not going to name them.
We now have relationship with reporters from every underlined major wire service, newspaper, news weekly, and television network in the nation. In many instances, we have persuaded reporters to postpone, change, hold, or even scrap stories that could have adversely affected national security interests or jeopardized our sources and methods. And it goes on to then to say that they have the same within academic circles.
There's a finding that the Mike Committee made that they have verified 42 full-time Central Intelligence Agency paid employees that were inserted inside the major national news media centers. And most of them ended up being the so-called national security reporters.
The man turned to me, and this is a board member of Time Life, and said, Dr. Greer, we basically are scribes taking dictation from the right hand of the king. The fourth estate is dead.